He looks at the track the way a surgeon looks at a scar, knowing both the pain that made it and the precision required to open it again. Andrea Dovizioso stands just beyond the noise, his gaze tracing the thin, invisible lines that separate instinct from calculation, bravery from madness. To the crowd, Marquez is the storm. To Dovizioso, he's the equation that refuses to balance. "You can't outpower him," he once murmured. "You have to rewrite the rhythm of his breathing. That's not poetry. It's telemetry." He's seen it in the data, in the fractional drop of brake pressure before turn 10, the imperceptible twitch that reveals when genius becomes pattern. Dovizioso knows that beating Marquez isn't about speed. It's about sabotage at the molecular level, rewiring the heartbeat of a man who's turned chaos into a measurable variable. In his mind, the asphalt isn't black. It's a pulse, an ECG that records human defiance at 340 kilometers per hour. Every vibration through the handlebars tells him that domination has a frequency, and that to end Marquez's empire, someone must dare to play out of tune. He can almost hear it, the sound of the world holding its breath before a corner, the whine of carbon brakes cutting through fear itself. The engineers speak in numbers, but Dovizioso thinks in fractures, tenths of a second, fragments of courage, microseconds where the universe bends around a decision. For him, the duel was never about machinery. It was about consciousness. And as the wind carries the smell of burned rubber and hope, he understands what the others still refuse to. Marc Marquez doesn't ride a motorcycle, he conducts reality. To break him, you don't twist the throttle harder. You make the world skip a beat. And in that fragile space between calculation and chaos, Dovizioso's thought becomes the spark that ignites the story. The moment the legend of Marquez stops being untouchable and starts being human. He sits inside every visor before the lights even drop, a quiet code written into the nerves of his rivals. They call it racing, but against Marc Marquez it feels more like learning a new language you'll never fully master. The paddock knows his rhythm, yet no one can break it, as if each corner hums in his frequency. "You don't race against Marquez," Dovizioso once said under his breath. "You must deprogram him." The word still vibrates across pit walls like an electrical current that no algorithm can decode. Each rider straps in knowing that talent alone is insufficient, because the battle begins long before the clutch releases. The Ducati telemetry does record fear, but you can almost read it in the fractions of throttle hesitation before turn 1. Inside, Marquez whispers to himself, "I'm not chasing them, I'm rewriting them." His confidence isn't arrogance, it's data processed into instinct. To face him means to face yourself, stripped of excuses, naked beneath the floodlights of precision. He senses weakness like an animal senses rain, invisible yet inevitable. In 2025, MotoGP isn't about speed anymore. It's about who controls the collective heartbeat of the grid. Rivals search for mechanical miracles, yet the true weapon hides inside his mind's latency, measured in milliseconds of courage. Engineers tweak anti-spin mappings, but courage has no firmware. His style isn't beautiful, it's efficient, a geometry of fear and fascination. Watching him is like observing a comet you can't touch, burning logic itself. The metaphorical asphalt becomes a mirror, one that reflects who dares to look back. Every curve becomes a confession, every overtaking attempt a psychological dissection. When he crosses the line, there's no explosion of joy, only silence heavy enough to bend the air. And in that silence, everyone realizes the same truth. You don't defeat Marquez, you survive him. ChatGPT said. The return began in whispers before it became a roar, the kind of murmuring that moves like wind through carbon fiber and fear. Marquez's shadow appeared first, lighter, leaner, as if rebuilt molecule by molecule after 4 years of exile and pain. Every screw in his right arm carries the memory of an unfinished lap, and yet he rides as though pain itself had been engineered out of him. The Ducati GP25, tailored like a suit of red precision, breathes with him, not beneath him. He chooses when to hurt you, murmurs a rival engineer, glancing at the telemetry that looks more like a heartbeat than a data stream. His acceleration curve now flattens with surgical patience, conserving tire integrity through a grip algorithm he personally helped recalibrate during endless nights in Bologna. Inside the helmet, a whisper rises, "I no longer fight the bike, I let it think with me." His eyes behind the visor no longer blaze, they calculate. The reckless boy, who once bent physics for applause, has become a strategist of silence. When he leans, there's no drama, just inevitability. Each apex feels preordained, as if he'd drawn the line before the weekend began. Reporters call it maturity, But the truth smells colder. It's precision born of suffering. His Ducati doesn't growl. It exhales, seamless and cruel. A small vibration in turn 9 reveals a hidden asymmetry in the rear shock's compression ratio, but he rides through it as if taming imperfection were his new addiction. The metaphor fits. He is a lighthouse, unblinking amid chaos, guiding even those who wish him lost. The paddock's noise falters when he walks by, not out of reverence but survival instinct. He knows it too. Every silence feeds him. The climax comes not with a victory, but a realization. He has turned pain into architecture. And the man who once conquered the track now commands time itself. He has stopped chasing the horizon. Now he shapes it. The first laps are no longer chaos but observation, a hunter's silence wrapped in carbon and leather. Rivals call it patience, but patience isn't the right word. It's orchestration. He watches Bagnaia break 3 milliseconds too soon and files it away like a secret weapon. He's studying us, whispers a crew chief, and everyone knows it's true. Marquez no longer needs the glory of early dominance. He feeds on prediction. Each lap becomes a psychological MRI, scanning the nerves of his competitors. Inside the helmet, he breathes slowly, counting corners like chess moves. I let them think they're leading. I'm just moving pieces. Telemetry reveals nothing unusual except a subtle delay in throttle input mid-turn, a trick he uses to lure others into misjudging their grip. His right wrist has become a metronome of deception. He fakes imperfection with the precision of a conductor inviting dissonance, turning the race into a symphony of misplaced confidence. The Ducati's response time, measured in a whisper of 0.004 seconds, syncs perfectly with his intent. Every false wide line, every delayed apex, is a sentence in his invisible script. Watching him, you feel time stretch. His presence bends momentum itself. Commentators speak of strategy. What they mean is psychological dissection. The metaphor is fitting. He's a spider on hot asphalt, still while everything else trembles. Rivals don't realize they've already lost until they break where he expects. The climax arrives not when he passes, but when they finally understand they were never racing him at all. They were performing in his theater, and the curtain had already fallen. Dovizioso speaks without raising his voice, yet the paddock leans in as if thunder had rolled through the brief silence between engines. His hair is grayer, his tone surgical, the weight of unfinished duels echoing behind each syllable. You don't beat Marquez by riding faster, he says. You beat him by breaking his control. It's not advice. It's a diagnosis carved from years of shared battle. Young riders nod politely, unaware that respect is the first form of surrender. He studies them the way he once studied brake markers, knowing most will never dare to test fear's anatomy. You all want to be perfect, he thinks, but perfection never scared him. The secret isn't aggression, it's distortion. When you disrupt Marquez's tempo, his genius turns brittle, and for a breathless second, he becomes human. There's a little-known fact about his 2018 duel in Austria. Dovizioso cut throttle 2 beats early in turn 7, forcing Marquez into overcommitment, a move that looked defensive but rewired the entire lap. It's not recklessness he teaches, it's psychological vandalism. He tells them to fake calm, to slow the rhythm of their eyes before a corner, because Marquez reads pupils faster than telemetry. Don't respect him. Destabilize him. Show him you're willing to fall. The words hang like exhaust fumes in cold air. His metaphor is quiet but cruel. Marquez is glass under pressure, beautiful until someone taps the right frequency. Around him, engineers whisper, journalists scribble, yet the moment belongs to silence. The climax isn't in his speech, but in what it implies. That courage isn't defiance, it's contamination. And as the riders file out, the old champion closes his notebook knowing one thing. Fear, once named aloud, changes hands forever. They arrive polished, media-trained, and algorithmically perfect, each lap sculpted by telemetry rather than impulse. Bagnaia glides with mathematical grace, his lines so clean they almost erase emotion from the asphalt. Martin flickers with kinetic brilliance, but his aggression evaporates when Marquez locks eyes with him on a grid. Acosta burns brightest, a comet of youth, yet even his fire bends toward reverence. They're brilliant, but tamed, mutters an old mechanic polishing brake discs that still smell of the past. The new generation grew up watching Marquez on glowing screens, learning his myth instead of his flaws. How do you kill the god who taught you to pray? Thinks Martin as he tightens his gloves before a night race. Their bodies are sculpted by data, their instincts softened by simulation. Bagnaya's Ducati settings include a custom rear grip offset that neutralizes slides, but also the chaos that once bred miracles. They know how to win, but not how to unsettle. The paddock feels sterile, a laboratory pretending to be a battlefield of nerves. Acosta still watches Marquez's onboards before bed, memorizing movements instead of imagining rebellion. The metaphor is cruel but precise. They are reflections in a mirror that Marquez built himself. Dovizioso watches them and sighs, aware that comfort is the enemy of legend. Journalists praise consistency, but greatness feeds on fracture. He already lives in their heads, Piero confides, half ashamed of his honesty. The psychological inheritance is complete before the race begins. Every green light confirms obedience disguised as excellence. The climax comes quietly when the youngest realizes that admiration is another kind of leash, and history never favors the polite. Dovizioso lays it out like an engineer revealing a weapon disguised as wisdom, each word measured against the hum of unseen machinery. You don't need to outpace him, he says. You need to unwrite his logic. His formula isn't mechanical. It's psychological architecture designed to fracture rhythm. Break his tempo. Force unpredictability. Attack where instinct tells you not to. He recalls the telemetry from Misano 2019, when a deliberate half-second hesitation on corner entry forced Marquez into a miscalculated lean angle of 62.3 degrees, enough to break his timing loop. He hates uncertainty, Dovi muses, because doubt is the only terrain he can't map. The Ducati engineers call it controlled chaos, but he calls it courage. The plan demands the kind of bravery that erases contracts and friendships, a willingness to gamble oxygen for dominance. Make him doubt, he repeats, voice low, as though reciting a forbidden code. There's a technical note few know. Marquez's braking pattern drops pressure by 3% when forced to reevaluate a corner mid-entry, a micro-hesitation invisible to cameras but lethal in psychology. The metaphor fits perfectly. He's a clock that unravels if you bend time itself. Journalists call it strategy. Dovizioso calls it survival art. Each rider listening feels the gravity of the words tighten around their chest. No algorithm, no AI-assisted telemetry, no predictive model can simulate the look in Marquez's eyes when he no longer trusts himself. The formula sounds simple, but its currency is pain. To apply, it means burning the safety net of reason. And when Dovizioso closes his notebook, the air itself feels charged with danger. The climax lands like a verdict. To dethrone a king built from chaos, one must dare to become chaos itself. There's a strange quiet that follows every race Marquez doesn't win, a silence heavier than triumph. Even in second place, he owns the air, reshaping disappointment into authority. Reporters fumble for narratives, but the truth sits in the way other riders avoid eye contact. Even when he doesn't win, he wins. Murmurs a Sky Italia correspondent as mechanics fold pit boards like confessions. His control is not loud. It's osmotic, spreading through glances, through the rhythm of interviews, through the soft tremor in a rival's handshake. The Ducati GP25 hums on its stand like an animal still half awake, telemetry lights pulsing with residual dominance. They think it's over when the flag drops, he thinks, but my race starts when there's ends. He's turned subtlety into tyranny, rewriting what victory feels like. The metaphor fits perfectly. He's gravity and leather unseen, yet pulling everything toward him. Even his defeats seem intentional, choreographed pauses in a symphony only he can hear. Analysts dissect data, yet none can chart the emotional displacement he causes. A little-known pattern shows that in races he doesn't win. Average lap times of those who beat him drop by less than 0.2, proof of how tightly he controls collective rhythm. He speaks softly and debriefs, offering no excuses, and that calm infects the paddock like humidity before a storm. Sponsors smile, rivals tighten their gloves, but everyone feels the same unease. They're living inside his narrative. The cameras catch his half-smile, the one that says, "I'll let you breathe today." Engineers compare notes, but courage can't be reverse-engineered. His stillness after defeat carries the menace of unfinished work. The climax arrives not with a checkered flag, but with the understanding that silence in his hands is the loudest form of power. Dovizioso walks into the studio with a gait that has measured out 1,000 races and carries the sediment of loss and lesson in his shoulders. He speaks into the camera with the intimacy of a man who has paid in flesh for knowledge, and his words land like stones thrown into a still pond. The championship isn't lost, he tells Sky, voice steady. It's not Marquez's speed that's unbeatable, it's everyone else's fear. He folds his hands, and in that simple motion, the ledger of strategy and scars is visible to anyone who knows how to read a life. Inside his head, a sentence repeats like a braking marker. I will not let legend become an alibi, and that private mantra stiffens into resolve. Dovizioso's prescription is brutal in its simplicity and sounds like both a dare and a death sentence when he names it aloud. He explains a little-known technical detail about brake bias that most fans ignore. Forcing a 1.8% rearward shift during mid-race stints can disrupt Marquez's expected entry timing and induce micro-hesitation. The paddock listens because this briefing is more than talk. It is a manual for psychological demolition aimed at an opponent who maps minds, not only lines. Young riders leave the tent with new tremors under their helmets and a recalibration of what courage will now demand of them. Some whisper that Dovi asks too much and that careers and contracts are fragile filaments to be cut for the sake of a theory, and they are not wrong. He knows the formula requires a willingness to tumble and to sacrifice points, sponsorship smiles, and the safety of a steady place in the standings. The metaphor he chooses is strange and tender. To dethrone Marquez is less like toppling a citadel and more like draining a lake to reveal bedrock, slow, revealing, and irreversible. There is a technical aside he offers off mic about tire thermal gradients, in which pushing sector 2 hotter by 3 degrees shifts an opponent's window of aggression and engineers scribble it down. Journalists will translate the science into spectacle, but Dovizioso does not want acrobats. He wants actors who will carry the role of necessary rupture. In his inner monologue, the veteran hears time as a percussive drum and thinks I can teach them how to hurt him, but I cannot make them choose, and that ache is raw. Teams debate the morality of his counsel, and some call it heroic while others call it ruinous, and the argument spreads like a fever through hospitality tents. He offers no false comfort because victory is not guaranteed, only possible, and the price is counted in things that seldom make headlines. The paddock for once is split between those who prefer steady points and those who are hungry for legend and the schism tastes of ozone and petrol. Dovizioso leans toward the microphone and delivers the injunction with surgical clarity: stop racing to survive. Race to destroy him. The climax arrives like a verdict said in a whisper across a microphone and a paddock. Only one rider will step forward and pay the cost, and perhaps then history will bend no return. The garage smells of rubber, sweat, and electricity of almost. A young rider sits alone beneath the soft hiss of the compressor, his gloves still on, his heartbeat sinking with the tick of cooling metal. Outside, the sun slides behind the stands and paints the pit lane gold, a light that seems to judge more than bless. He's not famous, not feared, yet something in his stillness disturbs the air like an omen no one dares to name. Mechanics pass without speaking. They feel the vibration of intention before they see it. When Marquez passed in the last session, he didn't yield, and the replay showed it, a front wheel tracing defiance inside the line of a legend. That's how revolutions start, Dovizioso whispered later, not with words, but with one unexpected braking move. The sentence lingers like a prophecy written on exhaust fumes. I'm not here to follow, the young rider thinks. I'm here to erase the script. There's a tiny detail unnoticed by most. His clutch lever, adjusted 2 millimeters closer than standard, allows a sharper release under braking, an intimate tweak that turns hesitation into commitment. The Ducati engineers call it reckless. He calls it necessary. His hands tremble not from fear, but from the voltage of awakening. The metaphor fits perfectly. He's a match held over dry grass, quiet until the wind remembers it. Around him, telemetry screens glow like silent witnesses to rebellion. In the paddock bar, the veterans feel a shift, a barometric drop in certainty. Marquez senses it too, a static hum in the air that his confidence cannot quite cancel. Interviews continue, engines start, but something unseen tilts the balance of belief. The cameras don't notice, yet the story has already bent toward a new axis. When the visor drops tomorrow, the grid will look the same, but it won't be. The climax is neither a crash nor a victory. It's the moment before both when destiny inhales. And in that fragile breath, history waits for someone to stop respecting gravity. The film breathes in the rhythm of machinery and human fragility, a psychological motorsport drama carved between speed and silence. Every frame glistens with the wet sheen of obsession, where courage isn't the absence of fear, but its choreography. The genre bends between realism and dream, like Rush rewritten by the pulse of whiplash, intimate yet explosive. The mood is tense and introspective, the camera lingering too long on the space between breath and throttle. Racing, the narrator says, isn't about going fast, it's about surviving yourself. The paddock becomes a cathedral of pressure, engines humming like nervous hearts beneath metallic light. Rain falls not as weather, but as punctuation, highlighting the tremor of hands tightening gloves before ignition. "I am the machine, and the machine is me," whispers a rider in a fleeting inner monologue, and the line divides man from myth. The cinematography turns every reflection into confession: chrome, visor, pupil, soul. Technical authenticity anchors the poetry. Brake temperatures, tire wear, and anti-spin algorithms form the skeleton of emotion. Fear and courage dance in close quarters, their choreography tighter than any apex. The visual palette is glacial: gray tarmac, red fairings, and eyes burning behind smoked visors. Sound design becomes a language. The crack of gear shifts, the whisper of rain on leathers, the heartbeat beneath carbon fiber. The metaphor that holds it all is simple and haunting. Every racer is a candle lit against a hurricane of noise. Narrative tempo alternates between stillness and explosion, control and chaos, the geometry of domination versus the mess of being human. Each cut feels earned, each silence a scream. The legacy of Marquez becomes a mirror through which every rider measures their own fragility. In the end, the film doesn't celebrate victory, it dissects it. And as the credits roll, the last image remains, a visor catching the reflection of a storm that never ends.